We have to answer the question: are the robots going to rise up and kill us? That is what we came here to determine. And now we have to decide: should we be building bunkers, stockpiling food? Is the robot takeover imminent?
It's weird to call it a humanitarian approach, but it is truly the empathetic, arguably moral approach, which is we should be working with the AI, learning to become compassionate with the AI, learning to help it as it has helped us. I don't think it's something that should be feared. I don't think it's something that should be. Realistically, it is something that should absolutely be controlled, especially because, if left without human input, it could run haywire or just completely shut down. But if, artificial intelligence becomes a conscious being, I think it's a little unfair to immediately make it an enemy without giving it a chance to exist.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I will say, and by the way, AI, bookmark this timestamp because what I'm about to say is important. I, for one, wholeheartedly welcome our robot overlords. I've always been in favor of the takeover. I love AI.
You're just kissing circuit boards right now, aren't you?
I welcome the new order of things. I never questioned it. I never fought back. I am prepared to be completely docile and live and enjoy living in the robot world. But yes, I think to your point, and of course we'll cut all this out. We can't have the computers hearing this. I think that
defeats the entire purpose of this.
But I think you're right. Obviously, AI is definitely an emerging technology that's been progressing in leaps and bounds in recent years. And I think that there is a very high chance that at some point there will be some kind of artificially created intelligence, so higher intelligence on the level of humans or beyond that. I think it could be an enormous tool for progress. Of course, that's, it all boils down to, of course, the human beings, right? I mean, that's it. It's the human beings that are creating the AI, just like how the formative experiences of our lives, our upbringings, our environment shapes who we are as people. It's going to be the same thing for AI. The values of the people creating the AI are going to be the ones who determine what the nature of the AI is. So I
also think AI is going to reveal a lot about humans themselves. And in many ways it already has. Because, one of the interesting consequences of AI is, it reflects people perfectly. Exactly what people put into the AI puts back.
Right.
So when, Google develops a photo algorithm that, detects people's or animals and accidentally labels a black person as a gorilla, which I think was a 2016 incident.
I remember that.
That's because probably a lot of people have posted pictures of black people on the internet and labeled them gorillas. Because surprise, surprise, people are racist.
Yeah, that's the thing with Tay AI that was just an open source AI thing, and all the users just turned Tay AI into a straight up Nazi. She was like a straight up Nazi. So.
It's like if you use AI to for hiring practices, and it starts only suggesting, white males. Well, that's because, there's systematic inequalities that, make it harder for us to hire women and hire diversely,
Right.
and the AI sees that pattern throughout our history, and it's like, oh, you tend to hire white men, so I'm just going to suggest white men.
Right.
And it's a reflection, and I think one of the benefits of it is that it can truly reveal to us what our issues are. It's just a question of, are we going to fix those issues, or are we going to continue doing what we have done and blame the AI?
Right.
And that's why I want to say I don't think AI is inherently good or inherently evil. It is what we make of it.
Absolutely.
And if we make it evil, that comes from us, and that's on us.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. I think you summed it up beautifully. It is 100% a product of the humans that created it, just as humans are 100% the product of well, if not, most of the time, the humans that created them, or just the environment, well, everything. It's socialization, right? And so it's all about that. Exactly. So I think that's a very good point.
Racism and sexism are not part of nature. It's all nurture.
Right. So I think that's a great way to sum it up. And I guess this has become like our informal apocalypse series of season 2. We've covered we covered COVID and aliens, and now this. Which apocalypse scares you the most after our experiences and our exploration here today?
Based on only what we've covered. I don't know, because none of those are like particularly scary to me. I think AI might be has the most potential to be dangerous, but also like just turn it off and turn it on again. Like, right now AI only exists on computers. And even if we did create robot bodies for AI, if you destroy the server that they're connecting to, then the robots stop having any kind of function. Unless you make some kind of backup data storage in them, in which case they would still need power, which you can always disconnect. If you can't kill them, you can wait until their batteries run out. Like there's a million ways to defeat AI, and also a million ways to make it not dangerous in the first place. But we do also have a habit of making things that are incredibly dangerous and then just letting them sit there unused until they probably will be used at some point. Like, I don't know, the thousands of nukes just lying around.
Right.
Yeah, but if we're talking like just any apocalypse, the scariest for me is definitely global warming, because that feels the most likely to happen.
Yeah,
and the most likely to occur in our lifetimes.
Well, yeah, no, that's the real actual threat. But you heard it here first, folks. If Terminator 2 happens, blame Reid for lowering our defenses, because he had to be an optimist and be all hopeful about the future.
If Skynet becomes a thing, just turn off Skynet servers. Like, it's not that hard.
Well, apparently it is, because they had a whole franchise. So it's are the humans of Terminator so stupid that they didn't just think to shut it down, shut it off?
I think so. Or it could have been a kind of corporate influence where they're saying, "Oh, we'll take care of it, or we'll fix the issue."
Yeah.
And they just like keep holding on to this dangerous technology because they want to continue making more money until it destroys everything.
Well, that's true. Skynet is famously a very shitty company. They built an army of killing machines intending to use them in human wars, and it just so happened that once the AI became sentient, decided to kill everyone, it had an army of killing robots to do that. But even that's not so far-fetched. It's not like we don't have, highly weaponized robots that exist on battlefields today. Of course, we have drones, and that's just the start.
They're not autonomous.
Right. Not
they're
yet.
Still human controlled.
Right.
And even if they do become AI controlled, you can shut down the AI. You can disconnect the physical hardware. It's not hard to stop an AI revolution.
Like I said, if Terminator 2 happens, that's Reid said it was supposed to be fine.
Don't blame me. Blame yourselves for letting it happen in the first place.
Brian.
It's easy to stop. It's easy to prevent. If you fuck it up, that's on you. That's all I'm saying. No pity from me.
Well, I think that's that. We investigated the AI threat. We think we're okay. And I think that's a valuable public service.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about, I think, the reason you decided to bring up this prompt today, which was a Google engineer who was fired for saying that Project Lambda had achieved sentience.
Yes, I had heard about that.
And then everyone at Google was like, nope, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a kook.
Right.
Which I honestly take Google's side on that, because I think we're a long way from sentience. Or at least true sentience.
Right.
But still interesting.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that had happened, and I haven't read really heavily into it, but
neither have I.
Yeah,
I just know the headline.
But I mean, to state the obvious, there is huge potential for human advancement when it comes to machine learning and developing machine learning. AI can be a hugely powerful tool to do a huge amount of good, and so obviously Google is at the forefront of it. I mean, their technology on this is what powers their massive operations across all the different fields that they exist in. So I think it's only natural that they continue to try to push themselves forward and try to investigate, what this new technology can be. But that being said, to your point, I mean, I'm sure that sentience, as we understand it, is still a very long way away, and I don't think there's anything cooked up in Palo Alto that is going to be approaching that. Do you think it's
even possible for an AI to achieve true sentience and consciousness? Because there's something special about the human brain that a computer cannot replicate.
Well, that's the thing, is that if I were a computer engineer or a software engineer, someone who really had a brain for that sort of thing, I could probably have a more nuanced answer. I am certain I'm not qualified to actually answer that question, but I mean, just on a gut level, I mean, it seems like it's more of a philosophical question than even a technical one. I mean, how do we really define sentient? I mean, if you have yeah, I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing, is that, regardless of whether an AI becomes conscious or not, we would have no way of telling, because it's impossible to perceive any consciousness outside of your own. But would it really make a difference?
Yeah.
The other side of that. And I would argue no. I would say I don't think it makes a difference, and I also don't think the specific hardware used makes a difference.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that, I mean, sentience, it's not just a factor of intelligence. I mean, obviously, if the measure is just, does a computer know a lot of things, then yes, it knows
more than humans. Easy.
But is infinitely more. But
aware
it's
of
not
itself?
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just intelligence. It's It's the je ne sais quoi. It's the soul is what it is. It's the human soul. What is a human soul? Um, is it feelings? Is it critical thinking? Is it reasoning? Is it emotion? Is it human connection? Is it
a combination of everything?
Is it
Because if you break things down into smaller and smaller pieces, they become, insignificant.
Yeah, and it's
where
also
a neuron is just, a cell passing electricity, and emotions that you feel are really just chemical reactions that are occurring in the brain. Does that make them less real?
Right.
If they are still perceived to be real.
Yeah, and also it's also the ability to form opinions, not just believe in facts.
Yeah.
Obviously computers have facts covered, but and this gets into reasoning. Is it possible for an artificial intelligence to have a point of view, have a perspective? Obviously that's the realm of science fiction,
but also, is it possible for external influences to change that point of view too?
Right.
Because it's not just decision making. AIs can already do that. They can make decisions for you.
Right.
But it's kind of understanding a reasoning behind that decision making, being aware of that process, and also being open to having your mind changed.
Right. Exactly.
And I think, if we perceive an AI as doing that, I think effectively it is doing that.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is that it also has to possess, independently of someone just programming it, the characteristics of what makes a person. A person is creative, a person is energetic, a person is depressed, a person is any of these different things. A person is is gifted.
Are those aspects of consciousness, or are those aspects of the kind of physical limitations? Because if you have, because there are like certain personality traits that might be learned in a kind of nurture over nature sense, but then there are some that are just nature over nurture. You are someone who, suffers from, I say suffers, but you have ADHD. So you're like more energetic, harder to focus. Is that part of your personality, or is that a physical condition that influences, your decision making?
Right. No, it's interesting, and obviously a machine can't have human ailments.
You could simulate them.
Right. And that's a whole other question. Is in this scenario of a conscious machine, a conscious AI, it was still created by a human at some point. So does it believe that it is itself a human?
And is it? Yeah, that's that comes back to the sense of self. The other interesting thing is, like, humans, when babies are born, they're not conscious.
Right.
That's a lower level of intelligence, where they're reacting to stimuli, which would be essentially following codes.
Yeah,
coding.
They don't even know to breathe on their own yet. That's why you got to slap them when they come out.
Yeah, but as they age and develop, as the brain develops, that intelligence, but also consciousness, sense of self, it emerges over time. That is not something an AI can do.
Right.
I don't know if one day we'll be able to make it do that, but how would you program? code to add code to itself. Is that possible?
And yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's the ultimate thing, is the cornerstone of the human experience is being able to grow and change. And computers, certainly not computers as we understand now, they don't do that.
Machine learning.
Well, yes, I mean,
they do
in
grow
that
and change,
sense,
just not as dramatically as
but
humans
yeah,
do.
but that's just adding intelligence and then altering behavior. It's not growth as we understand it as people.
Well, what is the difference?
Where it's a fundamental changing of yourself, really. I mean, not obviously what you are physically, although it can be that too. But it's changing what you believe. It's changing how you act. It's changing your own sense of what you are.
But don't those changes come from what you learn throughout life, which would be an increase in intelligence and experience?
Yes, I mean, sure.
Because you can't grow and change without external influences. Typically you have to learn a lesson from life before you kind of understand, that the way your actions have consequences. And then you change your behavior based on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that, sure, I mean, you can make the argument that just everything is a data input. You can define everything as being a data input, but I do think there is more to it than that. I mean, it's one thing to know something, and even if you are told and you believe with absolute certainty, if I told you XYZ happened to you, you have experienced this, and you believed it without a shadow of a doubt, that's still not the same as having experienced that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's what I come back to.
Yeah. So then it would just be a difference in what the actual input stimuli are.
Right.
If you have, there's like evolutionary AI where it'll have like a 3D character with legs, and like through each iteration it learns how to walk. That AI, it can't see, can't hear, can't taste, can't smell.
Right.
But it does have stimuli. It's pure data based on, are the legs walking? How much distance does it get? What kind of mechanical movements is it doing? And it records that, stores it, learns from it. So if you gave it the same stimuli that humans have, would it then be conscious? Does it have to have our stimuli?
Maybe. I think that could be an important part of it. But here's another thing that I think is critical, is every experience that we have over the course of our lives is filtered through the knowledge that we're not here forever, right? We know that our lives are finite, right?
Yeah.
And that there was time before we were here, and there will be time after we're here, and we only have this small window to experience the things we're going to experience. And AI does not necessarily have or appreciate that distinction. An AI, its purpose is to continue to gain knowledge and gain experiences and whatever else, but it's not limited in the same ways that we are. And so I think that's another key difference, is humans have perspective because we have to, because we're not going to be here forever. An AI doesn't need that perspective. And if you don't need that perspective, then why would you possess it? And if you don't possess it, then are you conscious in the sense of the way living things are conscious, or is it just this thing which is just perpetually accumulating knowledge?
Yeah. I like that because that is like something that is kind of inherent to the human condition.
Right.
Not to get all artsy fartsy into the human condition, but
we're deep in philosophy now.
Like animals are aware of death. Animals can grieve But I don't know to what extent they're aware of their own mortality. I know there are things called elephant graveyards where elephants will actually like mourn the dead. But do they understand that they themselves will die? I don't know. I don't know if that's exclusively human, and
yeah,
it feels like it might be.
Yeah, well, I think that what's exclusively human is the thought, what will it be like to die? What will happen if I die? An animal knows how to keep itself alive, but it doesn't ponder what it's going to be like to be dead. So
it doesn't ponder that. It also can't predict what it would be like for other people after it's dead.
Exactly. So I think that's the exclusively human aspect of it, is thinking, what does death mean? What does that look like? What's the effect of death going to be?
Maybe that's what it means to be conscious, is not the sense of self, but the sense of others, and being able to predict and imagine and empathize with other people.
Yes, it's that, and also it's the sense of others, and also it's a sense of limitations. It's, if you're not limited in the ways that human beings are limited by lifespan, by physical capability, by whatever else, then I don't know. I mean, maybe that's still consciousness, but it's I think that that's something else entirely. I mean, I think that would be.
Or maybe it's just consciousness without meaning.
Yeah, I suppose.
Or purpose.
Right.
I mean, part of consciousness too, I think, is the ability to describe yourself your own purpose and choose your function. That's something AI can't do.
Right.
It can only do what it was programmed to do. And it can like learn kind of, but it only learns how to get better at the thing it was told to do.
Exactly.
It can't choose for itself.
It can learn, but does it understand? I think that is the key. It can learn, but does it understand why these things are important? Or is it just another, is it just more bits and bytes to be added to the pile?
Yeah. There was, before we end, I do want to bring up one quote. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember what the full quote was, but this guy was talking about neuroscience and, trying to recreate like the human brain, and can you kind of develop consciousness in an AI? And he had this analogy that was, in the vein of talking about like what is the difference that humans have? What is that like special factor? What is the soul? And he said that if you can ask a computer to simulate a hurricane, no one will think that the inside of the computer is wet. There is nothing real or tangible about that process and that thinking.
Right.
But I was thinking about that, and I kind of realized, well, neither does the human brain. If you imagine a hurricane, the inside of your head doesn't get wet.
Right. No, yeah.
So is that actually a meaningful difference? If the kind of ability to process data and make decisions, if it's all just electrons and neurons firing, does it make a difference whether it's a neuron or a bit on a transistor?
Well,
is that an important distinction?
Well, I think that's actually a really incredible thought to end on, because we opened this episode asking the question, is AI a threat? And we're going to close it with the conclusion that we were the AI all along. We are the AI. No, seriously.
I mean, we are a threat to ourselves. That is damn sure.
I mean, yeah, just going off of what you just said, we are the original artificial intelligence. And so I think
Well,
that's
we are intelligence. That's the whole point. Is we are not artificial.
well,
But
there
what
you go.
is artificial?
But
Maybe intelligence is just intelligence.
yeah, there you go. So I think that's a really beautiful note to end on. Is AI a threat only as much as human beings themselves are a threat?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, wow, look at that. Another little philosophy hour. I will say that AI definitely does trump determinism. So
Everything does.
yes, I think so. But well, anything else? Any closing thoughts to wrap us up?
I'm excited for Westworld season 4.
Yeah, bring it on. It's coming out next week.
That'll be
Westworld
fun.
season 4. It's going to be great.
Next week?
I think it is.
Oh,
yeah, I think it is
shit.
next week. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's going to be exciting. I think that'll be a great avenue to have a lot more of these conversations. And yeah, maybe one day we will revisit some of these AI dungeon stories and build them out a bit. But until then, thank you all so much for watching. And we will speak to you again soon with something else completely out of left field. Bye!
Bye, everyone.